Welcome to Bright Ideas, the podcast for leaders building companies and cultures that scale. I'm your host, Desiree Booker-Sharpe, keynote speaker and CEO of Color Vision Lab. If you're ready for unfiltered insights and strategies for building empowered teams and resilient businesses, you're in the right place. This is Bright Ideas, where leadership gets personal. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Bright Ideas. And thank you so much for tuning in to this latest Bright Bite solo episode. Before we dive into today's topic, I want to first share a couple of updates. First, we launched Bright Ideas on July 29th, and I am so blown away by the response. It took a lot for me to share so many personal parts of myself in such a public way. In my real life, I am a very private person, and I like solitude. If I could choose to not be on any social media platforms, I would absolutely do that. But I have to promote the business. I have to market. So that's not an option right now. But I like the private life, but I also understand my responsibility to share my testimony in hopes of it helping somebody else who's also going through a tough time. So thank you so much to everyone who texted, called me, left a review, rated the show, sent me a DM, did all these amazing things that supported our launch. I'm so grateful, and I hope that you continue to share the show with the people who need it most. The second update that I have is that I released my first guest episode with PR pro Dan Cohen of Full Court Press Communications, and he dropped some incredible insights to help leaders communicate with their teams better during seasons of change. When I think about that conversation, one of my favorite parts of the interview is when Dan talked about how he weathered the 2008 recession. He talked mindset and the tough decisions he had to make as a CEO. I'd say it was a very timely conversation, to say the least, considering the state of our economy, specifically in the U.S. market. So if you haven't already heard that episode, I would strongly encourage you to go listen to it, as we've already gotten some incredible feedback from the audience. In other news, you may notice that my voice is a little raspier than usual today. That's because my daughter brought home some sort of bug from school that has had me struggling for the past week. This is my first time getting sick as a mom, a wife, and a business owner, a full-time business owner. Before baby, if I got sick, I could just clear my schedule, sleep in as long as I needed, and let my husband nurse me back to health. Now, I have to work through the entire illness. And I'm kind of laughing a little bit on the inside because of how ridiculous that is. At the peak of my cold, it felt like I had glass in my throat, and every time I coughed, it was like someone was hitting me in the head with a hammer at the exact same time. And still, I was doing baby's laundry, giving baths, prepping bottles, getting my daughter dressed for school, and 20 other things, just for my daughter to wake up on Monday morning with a runny nose. So now we are both home, sick with the suds. Well, we don't actually have the suds. Me and my husband always say we have the suds whenever we get sick because of that one SpongeBob episode when he gets sick with the suds. But anyway, so it's the suds. I had to reschedule pretty much all of my calls, but there were 2 calls that I couldn't cancel. And at one of them, my daughter Zuri decided to make an on-camera appearance because she refused to sit in her bouncer. So here she is, sitting on my lap for half of the meeting, sneezing all over my keyboard and trying to eat my microphone cord. This was literally one of those moments when I had to just laugh to keep from crashing out. This is what life looks like for me right now. It's so messy and chaotic, but I've grown to cherish these moments because I know they're not going to last forever. Anywho, let's talk about AI. That's what everyone joined this Bright Bite episode to hear. We're going to talk about AI and how most people are afraid it's going to take our jobs. So if you're one of those folks who's been doom scrolling headlines, or giving into the AI or die narrative, I'm going to offer you something different today. This conversation is going to be grounded in facts, strategy, and truth, not panic. Yes, some jobs will disappear over the next 5 years because of AI. But instead of feeding the fear, I want to have a real conversation with you about, let me take a step back. I'm speaking to people leaders, so managers, directors, and VPs. I want to talk to you about how you can navigate this shift from a place of empowerment, not fear. This is going to be part one of a 2-part Bright Bite series. So today, our talk is going to center around people leaders who are leading at companies, so employees. I'm going to share some tips on how to protect your career as AI continues to advance. And then in part 2, I'm going to focus on my business owner community. We'll talk about how to protect your business as the AI wave continues to move at such a rapid pace. If you are an SMB business owner, you are definitely going to want to tune into part 2 of this 2-part series, especially if you are feeling the pressure to adapt or risk potentially falling behind or getting left behind. In my recent conversations with business leaders, I've noticed that some are doing a great job at adapting. They're bringing AI into their workflows, and as a result, they're becoming more intuitive, more creative, more productive, and they're gaining so much time back to focus on those needle-moving activities in the business instead of just the busy work. And then there's a whole nother group that is stuck in fear, denial, and I've even met someone, he's the CEO of a content writing company, who is already 1 foot out of the business contemplating an exit because he just doesn't see any way the business is going to survive. That's a real concern. But when you think about the differences between these two groups, the core factors are mindset, vision, and leadership. So if you're one of the folks who's been asking yourself, will AI take my job? Will my role even exist in 5 years? Or how do I stay relevant as AI adoption rises? I want you to keep listening, because here's the truth. AI won't replace leaders, but leaders who learn to use AI will replace those who don't. I want to first start by acknowledging the real fear around how quickly AI is advancing. There are literally updates and new developments happening every week. Every time I open my email, there's a new AI tool or new features being added on to an existing tool. And when I think about the period when I first started to experiment with AI tools, it was around the time that I came back to work from maternity leave in March. I had a very tiny team, big goals, and only 25 hours a week to make everything happen. So I started to go really deep into AI tools, but I started out with some basic ones like DeepSeek, ChatGPT, and Notion. Notion is actually one of my favorite tools. So if you're not familiar with Notion, it's an all-in-one AI workspace. Highly recommend. So I got really good at writing prompts. That took some practice. And as my prompts improved, my output improved. And within 30 days of experimenting, I had built the entire brand identity for my new speaking business, Desiree Booker-Sharpe. From website copy to lead magnet to launch content, everything was done and launched within 3 weeks. This is when I realized the true power that AI had and the real opportunity that it presented for small business owners. Here's the thing. I'm not a technical person, and I'm not an AI engineer. I'm the leader who gets very flustered by the most minute tech issues. So if I can leverage these tools effectively, I think you can too. I'm not going to assume, but I do have a hunch, considering my own technical capabilities being on the lower side. But I want to add a disclaimer here first, because tools like ChatGPT are known to occasionally hallucinate or produce inaccurate information. So it is critical to fact check everything. Ask it to cite sources, cross-verify, and never, ever blindly copy and paste any information it gives you. The last thing you want to do is risk your credibility at work or in your business. This fear about AI replacing workers was really blown up last month when Microsoft released a report showing which jobs were most and least likely to be impacted by generative AI tools. Here's a quick summary of what they found. Jobs that involve writing, research, editing, teaching, advising, and communicating, especially in roles like sales, marketing, admin support, education, and customer service, have the highest AI applicability scores. That means that AI is already helping people in those roles work faster, smarter, and more effectively. But on the flip side, occupations that require hands-on physical tasks, so think healthcare support, construction, maintenance, food service, cleaning services, those types of occupations were least impacted by AI so far. So I'm pretty sure those types of jobs will likely be around forever, but they're also not benefiting as directly from AI's capabilities as some of the other occupations I mentioned. So you may be thinking, what does that mean for people leaders? If you're in a role that relies heavily on communication, decision making, and knowledge work, AI is not here to replace you, but it is here to reshape the way you lead and work. In my opinion, the more you can leverage AI to support your strategic work and offload those time-consuming, repetitive tasks, the more valuable and future-proof you're going to be. The first thing you can do to protect your career is to audit your current role. Very simple. I want you to grab a notebook or open up a note on your phone, and I want you to create 2 columns. In column A, let's call that column automatable, and then the other column will be called human only. I want you to do a brain dump of all your daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly tasks. So think about things like report building, scheduling, and data analysis. All of those things should go under automatable. And then when you think about tasks like motivating teams, coaching direct reports, resolving conflict, and leading change are going to be human-only tasks. So go ahead and file those under that part of your chart or table. Sorry. If you need some help mapping this out, because I realize that when you're in a role for a long time, it could be difficult to kind of map out what your day-to-day responsibilities are because they become so routine. So if this is you and you need some help, I've actually created a simple prompt that you can plug into ChatGPT to create a custom leadership task inventory. It's going to help you clearly see where AI can support you and where your presence, judgment, and emotional intelligence are going to be irreplaceable. After you do this exercise, you'll likely notice a trend. The trend is that AI removes the grunt work while you bring all the human power to your work. So instead of obsessing over what might happen in 5 years, focus on what you can control today. The next tip is to build your AI literacy without trying to become a tech expert. The goal here isn't to try to be the next prompt engineering genius. The goal is to learn how to use tools like ChatGPT in ways that make your job easier and your output stronger. So here's an example. Let's say you're proposing a new initiative to redesign your company's performance review process. You can create a project in ChatGPT and call it Performance Management Revamp. Then say or type to ChatGPT, I'm using this chat to strategize a business case for redesigning my employer's performance management system. I work at a small marketing firm with 25 employees and $15 million in annual revenue. I'm a senior manager reporting to the VP of Client Services. First, help me articulate the pain points of annual reviews in terms of productivity, engagement, and retention. From there, you can ask follow-up prompts like, Now, describe a modern alternative focused on continuous feedback. Or you could also say, draft a one-page proposal that I can present to leadership. The great thing about ChatGPT is that it will automatically recommend follow-up prompts based on what your initial prompt is. I think this also speaks to how important it is to have a high-quality initial prompt to start your brainstorm or your workflow in that particular chat, because all of the follow-up prompting will be a derivative of that initial prompt. Another pro tip is using the voice to text feature, especially if you're prompting something that requires a lot of context. I'm a person that likes to send voice notes, so this was an obvious kind of like no-brainer for me when I'm using ChatGPT and other tools, but I think it's a lot easier than typing it out. But if typing is your jam, that works too, but voice to text definitely saves me a lot of time. Another pro tip is if you plan to dive deeper with ChatGPT and use it on a more regular basis, build out custom GPTs, custom workflows, things like that, I would definitely recommend upgrading to ChatGPT's Pro plan for $20 a month, if you have the means, of course. It's going to give you access to premium features like file uploads and more advanced capabilities that are going to save you a lot of time. I also, before we wrap up this part of the Bright Bite, I want to share a Forbes article or chat about a Forbes article that I recently read where I discovered the term super workers. So this is a new term that refers to employees who are using AI to boost productivity by 30% all the way up to 400%. These aren't people who are waiting around for their employers to mandate AI training. They are naturally curious, proactive, self-motivated, and honestly, they are quietly outperforming their peers at work. So, if you are following the trends on companies that are embracing AI adoption, you will actually notice that many of them are not slashing headcount. They are reskilling the talent they already have and using AI to elevate what's possible with their core people. Last, but definitely not least, tip number 3 is to double down on human skills. Skills like empathy, discernment, and communication are not only irreplaceable, they're now your greatest differentiators. One of the ways that I like to keep my own leadership sharp is through self-reflection, both in solitude and through journaling. I also intentionally invite people that I trust into my decision-making process. Sometimes it's as simple or as small as asking my team how they feel about an episode idea I have. Other times, it's inviting feedback from my husband or my therapist on a much harder decision that I'm processing. Right now, a huge theme in my leadership journey is empathy. And honestly, hosting this podcast has stretched me in ways that I didn't expect. When I speak to my guests, they often open up about deeply personal challenges like grief, job loss, financial hardships, and those conversations stick with me long after we leave the podcast studio. It softens me, really. It reminds me that we never know what someone is carrying when they show up to work each day. These days, if I run into somebody with a bad attitude, I try to practice empathy and think about what story they're living through that maybe I can't see. I'm not saying that I don't still get annoyed. I want to be realistic here. If you didn't know, I was born and raised in West Philly, and although I haven't lived there in over 10 years, I'm still a no-nonsense kind of person. But the difference is that now I at least pause and weigh the cost of reacting versus responding. 90% of the time, I choose empathy. And the other 10%, when I fall short, trust and believe my husband is right there to keep me honest. Because leadership is not about titles. It's about how people feel when they're in your presence. The more you cultivate those core human skills that we talked about, empathy, communication, problem solving, conflict resolution, those core human skills, the more irreplaceable you'll become. So if you want to future-proof your career, don't try to outwork AI. Learn how to outlead with it. I hope you got something out of today's episode. That's going to be it for this Bright Bite. I would love to hear from you. If you learned something new, if you found this interesting or helpful, or if you have some insights or tips on how we can improve future Bright Bite episodes. It's my number one goal to make this the most valuable resource for you as a business leader, as a corporate leader, or wherever you are leading in life right now. Remember, this is a two-part series. So in part 2, we're going to talk about protecting your business as AI rises. This is going to be a critical conversation for those of you who are small business or medium-sized business founders, CEOs, or if you're someone who's leading a small team or building something from the ground up. This is not a conversation that you want to miss. So if you are not already on my email list, I highly recommend that you sign up. It's free, easy to join, and you can unsubscribe at any time. But my email list is the first to know about any new developments and when new episodes drop. So if you want to make sure you don't miss a Bright Bite episode or a guest interview, make sure you join the email list at the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so appreciative that you're here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Bright Ideas. If today's episode gave you something to think about, here's your next step. DM me the word growth on LinkedIn to start a conversation about how we can help you scale smarter. And if you're a founder, CEO, or senior talent leader with a story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out about joining me on a future episode. And if you don't want to miss future conversations, be sure to follow the show, leave a quick rating, and download your favorite episodes to take them on the go. Your support helps more leaders discover bright ideas. Until next time, be bold, be resilient, be sharp. I'm Desiree Booker-Sharpe.